Good morning, everyone. As I clear my throat because it's early in the morning, and as the cars go down the street, rushing into work, I have another Tower Fan moment and an early morning download. And I want to talk about the picture-perfect scenario that's preventing you, from your blessing. See, some of us, I realize as I get older, have failed relationships for another reason. I didn't touch on this. And I said to myself, Deanna, how come you didn't speak on this? And it's because I had to think about it myself. Some of us have failed relationships, not because of our own personality flaws, not because we're bad people or done bad things, or because, in addition to A and B, there's another factor none of us have considered. Some of us have broken relationships because we're still looking at that illusion. We're still looking at that perfect scenario. We're still waiting for that perfect picture to play out. We're still looking at that perfect scene to be executed. And we're waiting for that perfect scene to be executed. And that's the only thing that's preventing a relationship to become a good one. And until that time, that relationship is going to stay broken until that perfect scene plays out. We're still living in that fantasy land. We still have that vision in our mind that's clear as day that that's the way it's supposed to be. And everything's going to be good when this perfect thing occurs between us. And it may never happen, people, because it's an illusion. And that could be the one thing that prevents you and that person from being closer together. And you could have been carrying this in your heart for years. And unfortunately, you have probably been around people who have been feeding into this illusion. Groups of people who have been telling you, once the two of you have had that moment together, or have done that thing together, or have gone to that place together, or have had that event together, everything's going to be fine. How many times have you been involved in a relationship for years, whether it's family or whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, and it's been broken for years, and you've had people as close to you tell you, once this happens between the two of you, everything is going to be fine, but until then, it's going to be broken? Think about it. I'm going to do a little story time here to tell you what's going on. And maybe it'll help you understand. Because I thought about this recently, and I said to myself, wow, that's the one thing that's preventing this relationship from being a good one. And also, that could be the one thing that's preventing you from letting a relationship go. Once upon a time, and this is just a combination of experiences from myself and a combination of experiences from others. So I'm kind of like cherry picking from different things that I was exposed to from others as well as myself. So hopefully this will help someone. Once upon a time, there was someone who had a friend for many, many years. And when they grew up, they kind of went their separate ways. But they came from different backgrounds. And when they went their separate ways, the person who was in their background kind of grew deeper into the religion that they were in. And the other person kind of went out into the world and built their own life. And when they got a little bit older, the other person decided to come back to the hometown they were in, and they decided to get back together and have and get closer again. But it wasn't the same as it was. And they were both pretty nice people. They both lived life and build lives together. But they couldn't get together, and they weren't as close as they were before. And it bothered the two of them. And the people around them were a little concerned, and they were like, well, how come the two of you weren't close? So what happened was is that the people that were around them were always bringing up the memories of, how close they were before, in hopes of bringing these two people closer together. What it wound up doing is it brought them further apart, because all it did was just make them feel sad about the fact that they weren't close anymore. The truth was that they grew up. They grew up, they developed their own lives, and they grew up and started to have separate lives. That's not a bad thing, people. It happens. When you're children, you have a certain life because that's what's mapped out for you. When you grow up and you go out into the world and you see different things, you map out a life for yourself. And sometimes that's different than what you're brought up with. Sometimes it's different, and different is not bad. I spoke about this in previous audios. The other person grew up with what they had, and they were satisfied with that. The other person grew up and decided to build a life that was contrary to what they grew up with. So that's where the differences came from. Everybody wanted to have this picture-perfect thing going on with them. And said, well, maybe if we have this ceremony that the two of them will get together, and then once we have the ceremony, everything will be fine. So they had this big ceremony, and the two of them got together, and because the way the ceremony was organized, it was a certain religious ceremony, they failed to realize that the other person, who no longer believed in those certain practices and rituals that they did in the ceremony, instead, they didn't think about the fact that that person didn't believe in those things anymore, and it turned out to be a disaster. The person attended the ceremony out of respect for their friend, but once it was over with, they became more distant. People were like, well, I don't understand. I mean, I was hoping this would bring them together and everything. Yes. But the thing is, they didn't take into consideration the other person's new life at all. It's like they were kind of, in a way, bullying. And I know when you think bullying, you're thinking aggressive. But sometimes bullying can be passive too. Bullying can be passive. And I think I want to talk about that in another audio. They were trying to coerce this other person in a way to try to create this stronger bond that used to exist way back when. It's like the other group of people didn't want to accept the fact that these two people grew apart. And those two didn't want to accept it either. So they wanted to try to force something stronger that used to be back in the day. Nobody wanted to accept the other person's differences, people. And that was the one thing that caused the relationship that was already distant. Now they're even further apart. So the other person not only distanced that person because of the ceremony, they also thought that that person was involved and they had no clue. So now they don't even communicate anymore. It made a bad situation worse. And this was all because the people involved were looking for this picture-perfect relationship to occur because of their expectations. Instead of enjoying each other, enjoying the differences, enjoying each other's company, enjoying each other's presence, respecting each other, they came in with expectations. And with expectations that are not solid, expectations that don't have any foundation, sometimes you can create a picture or an illusion that's not real, and you'll find yourself disrespecting the other person. And that can cause a blockage in the relationship. And that's exactly what happened with this person. So instead of strengthening a relationship, you wind up weakening it. And then when you look up, that person is gone. So I say this to say this, people. If you're looking for that one magic moment to occur, to make everything the way they were, or make everything a little bit better than what they are, maybe you should just put the brakes on everything, take a step back, and maybe just accept the fact that this is the way things are now, and there's a reason for that. Maybe you should just take a step back, and put the brakes on and say, look, maybe I need to look within myself and see within myself and find out what I need to do to make things a little bit better. Stop putting so many expectations on others and see what you can do to improve things on your end. Or maybe you just need to sit down and be quiet somewhere. Why does something always have to be going on all of the time? For some of you, maybe you are just so used to having something going on all of the time that you don't know how to sit down and be quiet for a change. That could be a problem too. And I've spoken about that in previous audios. There could be many reasons. But if you're looking for that one magic thing that's just going to pop and change everything, I feel sorry for you. I really do. So with that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. Peace.